30 minutes. That's all my boss scheduled before sliding a printed screenshot across his desk. My user ID, a sensitive dataset, and an external email address I knew by heart. In that moment, my career became a crime scene, and the leak pointed straight into my family. My name is Ethan. I'm 38, and I live just outside Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the kind of guy who likes routines, coffee at the same diner on Fridays, a run on Saturday mornings, and a job where the rules are clear and the expectations are written down. That last part mattered to me more than most people understood, because for most of my life, the rules at home were never clear. They changed depending on who was asking for what. And in my family, the person who always seemed to get the benefit of the doubt was my younger sister, Claire. I work as a data operations analyst for a mid-sized software company called Carrington Systems. We aren't some flashy tech giant, but we're big enough to have real security protocols, an actual IT department with teeth, and customers who would walk away in a heartbeat if they thought we were careless with their information. My job sits right in the middle of that. I don't write code, and I'm not in sales. I work with internal reporting, client dashboards, and data extracts, basically turning messy streams of numbers into something leadership can use to make decisions. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and stability is something I fought hard for. I'd been at Carrington for 6 years. I started as a contractor, got hired full-time, and slowly built a reputation as the guy who doesn't panic, the guy who documents everything, the guy who can be trusted with access because he doesn't get sloppy. My boss, Martin, was a careful man. Early 40s, ex-military posture without the attitude, and he ran our department like a clean kitchen. Label everything, store it correctly, and if something goes missing, you find out why. He wasn't warm, but he was fair. And in a workplace, I'll take fair over friendly any day. Outside of work, my life was simple. I lived alone in a modest townhouse. I was divorced, no kids, no dramatic ongoing battles, just two people who realized they weren't good together and signed papers like adults. I had a small circle of friends, and I kept my family at a manageable distance. Not no contact, not hostile, just controlled. Because whenever Claire got too close to my life, something happened. Growing up, Claire was the bright one, the social one, the one my parents called gifted, even when all it meant was she had a way of talking adults into giving her a second chance. If Claire forgot homework, she had a story. If Claire got caught lying, she had a reason. If Claire hurt someone, she had tears ready like a fire extinguisher, spray them around until nobody remembered what started the fire. I was the opposite, quiet, literal, the kid who assumed that if you followed the rules, things worked out. I learned early that wasn't true in my house. When we were teenagers, Claire once blamed me for breaking our neighbor's window with a baseball. I didn't even own a baseball glove. My parents grounded me anyway because you're older, you should know better. And because Claire looked so genuinely wounded at the idea of being punished. That was the pattern. I carried consequences. She carried sympathy. As adults, it shifted but never really disappeared. Claire drifted through jobs, relationships, fresh starts. She had talent, I'll give her that. She could sell herself well in interviews. She could charm coworkers. But staying consistent, taking responsibility, that never stuck. I stopped lending her money in my late 20s after I realized every temporary emergency had a sequel. First it was rent, then car repairs, then a medical bill that turned out to be a cosmetic dental procedure she needed for confidence. Each time she promised it was the last time. And each time my parents called me afterward to explain that Claire is struggling and family helps family. I still helped sometimes, just not with cash. I'd offer to review her resume, connect her with a recruiter, help her create a budget. That kind of support made her angry because it wasn't what she wanted. What she wanted was access to my money, to my stability, to the version of life I had built without her. And I didn't fully understand how much she resented that until the year everything changed. It started with something that seemed harmless, a dinner. My mom called me in early October and said she wanted all of us together, just a quiet meal. She sounded tired, like she'd been negotiating peace talks all day. I agreed. Mostly because I hadn't seen them in weeks, and because I knew if I said no, the guilt would come in waves. We met at my parents' house on a Sunday evening. Roast chicken, overcooked vegetables, the same dining room where every big argument from my childhood seemed to still hang in the corners. Claire showed up 15 minutes late, wearing a blazer like she was headed to a meeting, not family dinner. She hugged my mom, gave my dad a quick kiss on the cheek, and then looked at me with that bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan," she said, like my name tasted strange. Still at Carrington? I nodded. Yeah, still there. Must be nice, she replied, and slid into her seat like she owned the table. The conversation bounced around small things: my dad's blood pressure, my mom's church fundraiser, Claire's latest job situation. She said she was doing consulting work, which was her way of describing short-term gigs she found online. She spoke in vague phrases, careful not to give details that could be questioned. Then she turned the spotlight back on me. So what do you actually do there? She asked, twirling her fork. Like, day to day. I'd had people ask that before. Most people didn't understand my job. But with Claire, it didn't feel like curiosity. It felt like inventory. I handle reporting, I said. Data requests, internal dashboards, that kind of thing. So you have access to what? Like everyone's information? She asked, eyebrows raised. No, I said. Not everyone's. I have access to specific datasets I need for work, and it's controlled. She laughed lightly. Controlled. Sure. Martin's name came up because my mom asked how things were going at work. I said Martin was tough but fair, and that we were moving into a new security compliance phase because one of our clients was in healthcare and had stricter requirements. Claire's eyes sharpened at that. Security compliance, she repeated. Sounds intense. It's just policy stuff, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Uh-huh, she said. Policies are only as good as the people who follow them. It was such a small comment. She said it like a general statement, like something you'd read on a poster in an office hallway. But something about it stuck with me, like a pebble in my shoe. After dinner, she cornered me near the kitchen while my parents argued over whether the leftovers should go into glass containers or plastic. Hey, she said softly, changing her voice into something almost friendly. Carrington, they hiring? For something remote maybe. I'm just exploring options. I watched her for a moment. What kind of work? Anything, she said quickly. Admin, project coordination, whatever. I'm flexible. I'd heard that word from her before, flexible. It usually meant she wanted the benefits without the responsibility. I can send you the careers page, I said. But I can't really. I know, she cut in, smile still fixed. No favors, I get it. The way she said no favors wasn't a joke. It was a reminder. As I drove home that night, I told myself I was being paranoid. Claire was my sister. Maybe she was genuinely trying to get her life together. But a week later, she texted me out of nowhere. Claire, random question. You ever work from coffee shops? Me, sometimes. Why? Claire, just curious. Like, do you ever download stuff to work on it? My fingers hovered over the screen. Me, I don't download sensitive files. Why are you asking? She didn't answer right away. 10 minutes passed. Then, Claire, relax. I'm not accusing you of anything. Just wondering how your job works. I stared at that message for a long time. Because the thing about Claire was, she didn't wonder. She hunted. She gathered details the way other people gathered souvenirs. I didn't reply after that. I put my phone down and went back to my evening laundry. A frozen dinner, a little TV, normal life. But normal life has a way of continuing right up until it doesn't. Over the next couple of weeks, little things happened. Nothing that would sound dramatic on its own. Just the kind of details that start to form a pattern when you look back. Claire liked my LinkedIn post about a project I'd completed. She never interacted with my career stuff before. She asked my mom casually what my work schedule was like these days. My mom mentioned it during a phone call like it was nothing. Claire was asking when you're usually in the office. She said she didn't want to call you at a bad time. I told my mom, that's weird, and she brushed it off. She's trying, Ethan. At work, Martin started acting slightly different toward me. Not openly cold, not accusing, just more watchful. He asked more questions than usual about my process. If I pulled data for a dashboard, he wanted to know exactly where it came from. If I emailed a file internally, he asked who requested it and why. That wasn't totally out of character. We were in a compliance push after all. But Martin had always trusted me enough to assume I'd done things correctly. Now he seemed to be verifying me, step by step, like he was quietly updating his picture of who I was. And that shift did something to my stomach that I couldn't explain. One Thursday afternoon, I got a calendar invite titled Quick Check-In. No agenda, just Martin and me, 30 minutes. I told myself it was about the compliance work, maybe a new project, maybe a promotion conversation. Those things happen after quick check-ins, right? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking towards something I didn't understand. When the meeting time came, I walked into Martin's office with my laptop under my arm and a notepad in my hand because that's who I am. If there's a conversation that matters, I document it. Not in a paranoid way, in a this is how I protect my future way. Martin didn't offer me a seat right away. He closed his laptop slowly, like he wanted his attention fully on me. "Ethan," he said, calm voice, neutral face. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." The air in the room felt suddenly thinner. I nodded once. "Okay." He reached into a folder on his desk and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He didn't hand it to me yet. He just looked at it, then back at me, like he was giving me one last second to confess to something I didn't even know I was accused of. "I received information," he said carefully, "that you may have been handling company files in a way that violates our data policy." My mouth went dry. I started, but he raised a hand, not aggressive, just stopping me. "Before you respond," he said, "I want you to understand how serious this is. If there's been any kind of data leak, intentional or accidental, this becomes bigger than our department, bigger than me." I felt my heartbeat in my throat. "Martin," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, "I haven't leaked anything. I haven't sent company data outside. I don't even use personal devices for work." He watched me for a long moment, then finally slid the paper across the desk. "Then explain this," he said. I leaned forward and looked down, and at the top of that page, printed in color, was what looked like a screenshot of a file transfer window. A file name I recognized, one of our internal datasets, a timestamp, a destination that looked like a personal email address. My eyes locked on one specific detail that made my skin go cold, because the email address on that screenshot didn't belong to a stranger. It belonged to someone in my family. The email address on that screenshot was Claire's, not a lookalike, not Claire, something that could belong to anyone. It was the exact Gmail address she'd used since college, the one she still used because she never stayed anywhere long enough to need a professional domain. For a second, I couldn't make my eyes move away from it. My brain did that thing where it tries to solve the problem by insisting it isn't real. Martin's voice brought me back. "Do you recognize the dataset name?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my throat tight. "It's a client export template, but I didn't send it to anyone. And I definitely didn't send anything to Claire." Martin's expression didn't change, but I saw something behind his eyes shift, something like disappointment mixed with caution. "Ethan," he said, slower now, "I didn't go looking for this. It came to me." "From who?" I asked, already afraid of the answer. He hesitated just long enough to confirm what my gut was screaming. "A family member of yours," he said. "Your sister contacted me directly." My hands went cold. "She contacted you? How?" "Email," he said, "to my work address. She said she was concerned. She said you'd been bragging, that you had access, that you could pull anything. She included several screenshots." "Several," I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay even. "Did she say why she was sending this?" "She said she didn't want to," Martin replied. "She said she was trying to protect you before it became a criminal issue." I stared at the paper again. The screenshot had all the right little details: file name, transfer bar, timestamp, even a partial folder path that looked believable. It was the kind of proof that would make a normal person's stomach drop, but it was also the kind of proof someone could manufacture if they knew what they were doing, or if they knew enough to make a fake look real. Martin leaned back slightly. "Here's where we are. I've notified HR and our security lead. It is already pulling access logs. Until we have clarity, you're not to access client data, and you're not to use your credentials outside of supervised tasks." "Supervised?" I repeated, trying not to sound like I was begging. "It's temporary," he said, but the word felt like a rubber stamp. "I need you to cooperate. If you've done nothing wrong, the facts will clear you." "If you've done nothing wrong," that phrase hit like a punch because it carried an assumption that doing wrong was on the table. I pushed the paper back toward him, careful not to crumple it, like the paper itself could accuse me. "Martin," I said, "I'm telling you straight, I didn't leak anything. Claire is. She's not stable. She has a history of stirring things up." Martin's jaw tightened, but his tone stayed controlled. "Be careful with how you talk about her, Ethan. I'm not asking you to attack her. I'm asking you to explain why she'd have anything that looks like this." "I can't explain it," I said. "Not yet, but it's not real." He nodded once. Not agreement, more like acknowledgement that I'd spoken. "Okay," he said. "Then we let it do their job. In the meantime, HR will schedule a formal meeting. Do not discuss this with anyone at work besides me, HR, or security. And Ethan. What? I asked. He looked directly at me. If you're being framed, that matters. But if you're not and you try to cover it, that will end you here. You understand? I did understand. That was the problem. I understood exactly what this could do to my career, even if I was innocent. I walked out of his office feeling like the floor had tilted slightly. People were typing, chatting, laughing near the break room like nothing had changed, and I wanted to grab someone by the shoulders and say, "Do you have any idea how fast a life can fall apart?" Instead, I sat at my desk and stared at my monitor, not really seeing anything. I replayed the screenshot in my head, the timestamp, the file name, Claire's email address. My mind kept circling one question. How did she know enough to make it look real? Because Claire didn't work in tech. She didn't know our systems. She wasn't some hacker. She was just persistent, manipulative, and angry. And then another thought landed, heavier than the rest. She'd asked me about downloading. That text message from weeks ago suddenly felt like the first crack in a window that had now shattered. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I opened our messages, scrolled back, read her questions again. They weren't random. They were reconnaissance. I called her. It rang 3 times, then went to voicemail. I called again. Same result. I texted, "Claire, call me now. This is serious." No reply. I tried to think logically, like I always did when panic wanted to drive. I needed to build a timeline. I needed to document. I needed to protect myself. So I opened a note on my phone and started writing. Dinner at parents' house, October 6th. Claire asked about work access. October 13th. Claire texted about downloading. October 20th. Mom mentioned Claire asked my schedule. Today, Martin confrontation with screenshots. Claire's email. Writing it down helped a little. It made it feel like something I could solve. Something with edges. But then the fear would surge again. What if they believed her? What if the proof was convincing enough that nobody waited for logs? Carrington worked with customers who demanded certainty. And a suspected leak, even an accusation, could trigger audits, lost contracts, layoffs. Companies did not like risk. People got sacrificed for less. That evening, HR sent the calendar invite. Not for next week, not when convenient. For the next morning at 9 a.m. The subject line was, "Confidential, Compliance Inquiry." That's when it stopped feeling like a misunderstanding and started feeling like an accusation with teeth. I barely slept. My body did that awful half-rest thing. Eyes closed, mind racing, heart jerking awake every time it almost drifted. At 7:30 a.m., I drove to the office early, parked in the far side of the lot, and sat there gripping the steering wheel like it was keeping me anchored to reality. I called my mom on the drive, even though I knew it was a mistake. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, honey." "Mom," I said, "did Claire say anything to you recently? Anything about me? About my job?" A pause. The kind where someone is choosing a version of the truth. "She mentioned you were stressed," my mom said carefully. "Why? What's going on?" I exhaled slowly. "She sent something to my boss. She's accusing me of leaking company data." Silence again. Heavier this time. "That can't be right," my mom finally said. But her tone wasn't outrage. It was confusion. Like she was trying to picture Claire doing it and couldn't, because the mental image didn't match the daughter she'd protected for decades. "It is right," I said. "My boss showed me. Screenshots. With her email address." "Oh my God," she whispered, like she was mourning the idea more than the act. Maybe she thought. Maybe she misunderstood something. "Mom," I said, my voice tightening, "she contacted my boss directly. She had his email. She built a whole story. That's not misunderstanding." My mom inhaled shakily. "Have you talked to her?" "She won't answer," I said. "Well," my mom said, and I could hear her shifting into the old pattern, the one that made my stomach sink. "Claire's been under a lot of pressure. She's been emotional. Pressure doesn't make you try to ruin someone's career." I snapped, sharper than I meant to. Then I forced myself to lower my voice. "Mom, I'm walking into HR in an hour. They might suspend me. They might fire me. This is serious." "I'll call her," she said quickly. "I'll talk to her. Maybe she can explain." I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. Explain what? How she faked evidence? Or why she thinks she can do this to me? "Ethan," my mom said, voice pleading now. "She's your sister, and I'm your son," I replied, then immediately hated how raw it sounded. She didn't answer. I ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back. At 9 a.m., I walked into a small conference room with glass walls. Inside were 3 people. Sandra from HR, a man from security I'd never met, and Martin. No coffee, no small talk. A folder on the table like the one in Martin's office, only thicker. Sandra spoke first. "Ethan, thank you for coming. This is a confidential compliance inquiry regarding an allegation of unauthorized data access and exfiltration." Exfiltration. The word sounded like a crime documentary. She slid a document toward me. "Before we begin, please read and sign this acknowledgement. It states you understand this is an internal investigation and you agree to maintain confidentiality." My mouth tasted like metal. I read it twice, signed it, and slid it back. The security guy introduced himself as Leo. His voice was neutral, practiced. "We received reports that specific files were downloaded and transferred to an external address. We're currently validating the authenticity of the materials provided and cross-referencing system logs." Sandra looked at me. "Ethan, have you ever sent company data to a personal email address?" "No," I said. "Have you ever downloaded client datasets to a personal device?" she asked. "No," I repeated. "I don't even use personal devices for work. Everything is on my company laptop." Martin kept his eyes on the table. I couldn't tell if he was avoiding looking at me or trying not to show what he felt. Leo flipped a page in the folder. The screenshots provided show a transfer window and a timestamp from 2 weeks ago. "Were you working from home that day?" I tried to remember. My brain scrambled through calendars and meetings. "Possibly," I said. "I work hybrid, but I can check my calendar." "We will," Leo said, almost gently. "That's what logs are for." Sandra folded her hands. "Until the investigation is concluded, we need to place you on administrative leave." The room spun slightly. "Paid?" I asked, hating that my voice sounded small. "Yes," she said. "Paid, but your system access will be temporarily disabled. Your company laptop will need to be collected today for forensic review." My chest tightened. "Forensic review makes it sound like I'm guilty." "It's standard procedure," she said. "This protects you as much as it protects the company." Leo slid another page forward. "We also need you to provide a list of anyone who may have access to your home office, anyone who may have had physical access to your laptop." My mind immediately went to Claire, and then I felt sick because the answer was so simple and so terrible. "No one," I said, then paused. "Wait, my sister was at my place once last month." Martin's head lifted slightly. Sandra's eyes sharpened. "When?" I swallowed. "She stopped by, said she wanted to talk. She was there maybe 20 minutes. She used the bathroom. She was around my desk." Leo wrote something down. "Did you leave her alone with the laptop?" "I don't know," I admitted, because the truth was I hadn't thought I needed to keep my sister in my line of sight like she was a threat. Sandra's tone stayed polite, but it hardened around the edges. "Ethan, this is very important. Think carefully." I closed my eyes for a moment and forced myself to replay that day. Claire at my townhouse. Her wandering gaze, her little comments about my nice setup, the way she'd asked casually what my password policy was at work like it was a joke. I opened my eyes. I stepped into the kitchen to get her water, I said. "Maybe 2 minutes." She was in the living room. "My desk is in the corner." She could have. I stopped because saying it out loud made it real. She could have touched my work machine. Leo nodded slowly, like a puzzle piece was clicking into place. "Okay, that's helpful." Sandra stood. "We'll have someone collect your laptop after this meeting. For now, you're on leave, effective immediately. Do not attempt to access company systems. Do not contact clients. And please do not contact the individual who submitted the complaint." I almost laughed again, but it came out as a harsh exhale. "You mean my sister?" Sandra didn't react. "I understand it's personal, but this is now a corporate compliance issue." When the meeting ended, I walked back to my desk with Leo beside me like an escort. Not quite a guard, but not quite not. I shut my monitor down, unplugged my laptop, and handed it over like I was surrendering the one object that could prove I was innocent. As I walked out of the building, people glanced up. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that I felt exposed. Like the accusation was already leaking into the air around me. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Claire, I heard you've been stressed lately. You should take care of yourself." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Not from tears, but from rage. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. 100 replies screamed in my head. "What did you do? Why are you doing this? Are you trying to destroy me?" Instead, I typed one sentence. "Me. Did you email my boss screenshots accusing me of leaking data?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then her reply came, sweet as poison. Claire, I did what I had to do. If you're innocent, you'll be fine. I stood there in the cold morning air with my car door still closed and realized something that made my stomach drop even further than the HR meeting had. Claire wasn't scared. She wasn't confused. She was confident. And that meant she believed whatever she'd set in motion was strong enough to hold up, even against IT pulling the logs. I drove home on autopilot, the kind of numb focus you get after a near miss on the highway. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my chest felt like someone had strapped a belt around it and kept tightening. Administrative leave, forensic review. Do not contact the individual who submitted the complaint. My sister had turned my job into a crime scene and was texting me like she was checking on my sleep schedule. When I got home, the first thing I did was open my laptop bag out of habit, and then remembered there was no laptop. My desk looked wrong without it, like a tooth missing in a smile. I sat down anyway and tried to think in steps. Step 1, what does Claire gain? Step 2, how did she do it? Step 3, what can I prove and what can I document before she twists the story again? I pulled up my router admin page on my personal computer. I'm not an IT guy, but I'm not helpless either. I checked connected devices, DHCP leases, anything that looked unfamiliar. It wasn't a perfect snapshot of the past, but I was looking for signs, some strange device that had been in my house, some unknown MAC address that could line up with the time frame Claire visited. Nothing jumped out. But then I remembered. Claire didn't need to be on my network to cause damage. She just needed access to my work machine long enough to plant something that looked like it came from me. And the more I thought about it, the more that 20-minute visit started replaying with a different tone. She'd shown up unexpectedly on a Tuesday evening, claiming she was in the area. She walked around my townhouse like a realtor, commenting on my furniture, my kitchen, my desk setup. She asked what kind of chair I used because maybe she should get one like that. She'd laughed at the little privacy screen I kept on my monitor. At the time, it had felt like jealousy wrapped in jokes. Now it felt like casing a house. My phone buzzed again. A call from my mom. I almost didn't answer, but I did, because part of me still wanted my mother to say, "I believe you." "Ethan," she said, voice tight. "What is going on?" "Claire told me you're in trouble at work." "Yeah," I replied, "because she put me there. She said she found something on your computer when she visited." My mom said quickly, like she'd been holding it in. "She said she saw emails, and she panicked." I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. "She found something on my computer." "That's what she said," my mom insisted. "She said she didn't want to, but she thought you were doing something illegal." I pressed my fingers to my forehead. "Mom, Claire doesn't have access to my work computer, and even if she did, she has no right to go through it. She's worried about you," my mom said. And it was the same old line, just updated for adult consequences. "No," I said, "she's not worried, she's angry, and she's doing what she always does, creating a crisis so everyone looks at me like I'm the problem." My mom exhaled shakily. "Ethan, don't say that, she's been crying all day." "Of course she has," I said. "Crying is her favorite tool." There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "You're being cruel." Cruel. Not Claire for accusing me of leaking company data. Not Claire for emailing my boss. Not Claire for risking my livelihood. Me for naming the pattern. "I'm being accurate," I said, voice controlled but low. "Mom, listen. It is pulling logs, real logs. If Claire made this up, it will show. And if she didn't?" my mom asked softer. That question landed like a slap. I went quiet for a second, then said, "If you're asking me if I did this, then you've already picked a side." "I didn't mean," she started. "Yes, you did," I cut in. "And I can't do this right now." I ended the call, then immediately felt the familiar mix of anger and grief, not because my mother was evil, because she'd been trained by years of Claire's chaos to believe Claire's emotions were evidence. That night I barely ate. I kept checking my email even though I knew my access was disabled. I kept checking my phone like some message could appear that would fix everything. Instead, around 10:30 p.m., Claire called. I stared at her name on the screen until it stopped ringing. 2 minutes later, she called again. I answered on the third call because at a certain point, you either face the person holding the knife or you pretend it isn't there. "What?" I said, not bothering to soften it. Her voice came through sweet and careful. "Hi. I'm glad you picked up. I was worried." "Worried," I repeated flatly. "Yes," she said, like she'd practiced sounding sincere. "Ethan, you didn't have to do whatever you were doing. You could have asked for help. I clenched my jaw. Stop. I didn't leak anything. She sighed, heavy and theatrical. Okay. Then why did I see it? See what? I demanded. The file transfer, she said. The emails, the downloads. I didn't want to believe it, but it was right there. And I couldn't live with myself if you ended up in prison and I'd stayed quiet. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. You're lying. A pause. Then softly, I'm not. I forced myself to slow down, to think like Martin would. Facts, timelines, specifics. When you visited, I said, did you touch my work laptop? I didn't touch it like I was snooping, she said, offended. You left me alone. It was open. The screen was right there. It locks when I walk away, I said. Automatically. Another small pause. Maybe you changed the setting, she replied. My stomach turned. So you're admitting you were on my work computer? I'm saying I saw enough, she snapped, dropping the sweet act for half a second. Then she regained it. Ethan, I'm trying to save you from yourself. By emailing my boss, I said. I had to, she insisted. You wouldn't listen to me. I didn't even know you thought something was happening, I shot back. You didn't confront me. You didn't ask questions. You went straight to my boss with proof. Her voice cooled. Because you're good at talking your way out of things. That was the moment I understood she wasn't improvising. She had a script. She'd rehearsed this version of me, the manipulative brother who could talk his way out of things. It was projection so clean it almost impressed me. I took a breath. Claire, it is pulling download logs, device IDs, access times. If this didn't come from my credentials, they'll know. If it did, they'll know how. Are you sure you want to keep lying? She laughed softly. You're acting like logs can't be manipulated. My skin went cold. Not because she was right, but because she wanted me to believe she was. Why are you doing this? I asked, quieter now. She hesitated, and for the first time her voice sounded less polished. Because you think you're better than me. I didn't respond, because part of me wanted to argue, and part of me knew arguing would be exactly what she wanted. Something she could later frame as Ethan admitted he resented me. I'm not better, I said carefully. I'm just not asking Mom and Dad to clean up my life anymore. Her tone sharpened. So now you're judging me. I'm describing reality, I replied. You've always been the golden boy at work, she said, the words dripping. Mr. Stable, Mr. Trusted. You don't even see how easy you have it. Easy. 6 years of grinding, swallowing pride, learning systems, staying late, being careful, making sure no one could call me unreliable. She called that easy. Claire, I said, if you have a problem with me, you don't get to use my job as a weapon. She went quiet again. Then she said, it won't find anything. My heart dropped. What did you do? I'm done talking, she said quickly. Just be smart. Don't make this worse. The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen staring at my phone, feeling the blood drain from my face, because that wasn't a threat designed to scare me. It was a statement from someone who believed she'd covered her tracks, and I couldn't decide what was worse, that she'd faked screenshots, or that she might have actually managed to trigger some kind of action under my credentials. The next day, around noon, I got a call from Leo, security. Ethan, he said, tone professional. We need you to come in for a follow-up interview, today if possible. My mouth went dry. Am I in trouble? You're not being accused in this call, he said, which wasn't reassuring. We're still gathering facts, but we have questions, and it's better to address them directly. I agreed and drove to the office feeling like I was walking back into a courtroom. They met me in a different conference room this time, smaller, with no glass walls. Sandra from HR was there again, and another person joined. Asha from IT, the security operations manager. She was in her early 30s, calm eyes, hair pulled back, and she had the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter without her asking. We're going to ask technical questions, Asha said, and I'm going to be specific. If you don't know, say you don't know. Guessing creates confusion. I nodded. Okay. She slid a printed sheet across the table. Do you recognize this file? I glanced down. It was the same dataset template, only now there were multiple versions with timestamps. Yes, I said. That's a template we use. Not always with client data. Sometimes it's a shell. Asha made a note. Do you ever export that file locally? Sometimes, I admitted, but to approved folders. And then I upload it to our internal share or attach it internally. And do you ever email it externally? She asked. No. She tapped the page. We're seeing activity related to this file on your user account. It does not automatically mean you did it, but we need context. On the day in question, were you in the office or working remotely? I was remote that day, I said slowly. I remember because my car was in the shop. Asha nodded like she'd expected it. Okay. And your work laptop, when you're remote, where is it usually kept in your home? On my desk, I said. Do you ever leave it unlocked when you step away? She asked. No, I said immediately. Then I hesitated because honesty mattered more than pride. It auto-locks, but sometimes it takes a minute. Asha's eyes lifted to mine. So there is a window, a small one, I said. Leo leaned forward. You stated your sister visited your home and was potentially near the laptop. Yes, I said. Sandra asked. Did she have any reason to know your password? No, I said. I would never tell her. Asha flipped another page and pushed it toward me. This is important, she said. Do you recognize this device name? I looked. It was a string of letters and numbers, like a system identifier. No, I said. I don't even know what my device name is. Asha nodded. That's normal. Most people don't. Then she said, we're also reviewing login method. Your account uses multi-factor authentication. Do you ever approve login prompts without reading them? No, I said. I'm paranoid about that. Asha's mouth twitched slightly, not quite a smile. Good, she continued. Do you share your phone with anyone? No, Leo asked. Has your sister ever handled your phone? Even briefly? I pictured the dinner at my parents' house, Claire hovering close, leaning in, asking questions, watching. I pictured her at my townhouse, me in the kitchen, her alone in the living room. I don't think so, I said. Then I corrected myself. Actually, she grabbed my phone once at my parents' to show my mom a photo, but I was right there. Asha made a note again, and the sound of her pen felt louder than it should have. Sandra's voice softened. Ethan, we need to ask directly. Do you believe your sister is capable of fabricating evidence to harm you? I stared at the table for a long moment. Because saying yes made me sound vindictive. Saying no made me sound naive. So I answered the only way I could. Yes, I said. And I think she already has. Asha leaned back slightly, like she'd reached a point in her checklist. One more question. On the day she visited your townhouse, do you remember if she took any photos? I blinked. Photos? Of your desk, she clarified. Of your screen. Of your laptop. A memory hit me, sharp and sudden. Claire standing near my desk with her phone in her hand, laughing about how corporate my setup looked. I'd assumed she was texting. I'd assumed she was bored. I don't know, I admitted. But it's possible. Asha exchanged a quick look with Leo that I couldn't read. Then she gathered the papers into a neat stack. Okay, that's all for now, Sandra added. We'll contact you when we have updates. I stood, feeling like I'd just handed them a pile of puzzle pieces and prayed they'd assemble the right picture. As I left the building again, my phone buzzed. A text from my dad this time, short and blunt. DAD, your mother is upset. Claire says you're blaming her. Fix this. I stared at the message, then looked up at the gray sky over the parking lot. Fix this. Like this was a broken appliance. Like I could just tighten a screw and make my career, my reputation, and my family trust snap back into place. That night, I did something I'd avoided for years. I went to my parents' house unannounced. Claire's car was in the driveway. My stomach tightened, but I walked up anyway and knocked. My mom answered, eyes red like she'd been crying. Behind her, I saw Claire on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket like she was the injured party. She looked up and gave me a slow, almost sympathetic smile. Oh, she said, he's here. I stepped inside, and the living room felt like a stage where everyone already knew their lines except me. My dad stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. Claire dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Ethan, she said softly, please don't yell. I can't handle conflict right now. I felt my hands curl into fists. I'm not here to yell, I said. I'm here to ask you one question in front of Mom and Dad. Claire nodded like she was brave. Okay. I looked her dead in the eye. Did you touch my work laptop when you visited my house? Claire's expression didn't change much, but her eyes flickered just once toward my parents. Then she said, carefully, I didn't have to. It was open, and my father's face tightened like that answer satisfied him. But it made something in me go cold, because it wasn't an answer. It was a doorway, and I suddenly understood that whatever Claire had done, she'd done it in a way that let her hide behind one simple claim. I didn't do anything. I just saw it. The kind of claim that could destroy me, unless the IT logs showed exactly who did what, And when? Claire's answer hung in the room like smoke. I didn't have to. It was open. My mother looked between us like she was watching a tennis match and didn't know which side to cheer for. My dad kept his arms crossed, jaw set, like he'd already decided this was going to be about my attitude, not Claire's behavior. I forced myself to keep my voice steady. Open doesn't mean you get to use it. Claire gave a small, wounded shrug. I didn't use it. I saw what I saw. You told Mom you found emails, I said. You told my boss I was leaking data. That's a big difference from I saw something. Claire pressed a tissue to the corner of her eye, then looked right at my parents. I knew he'd do this. He's trying to make me look crazy. That old move, don't answer the question. Reframe the question as abuse. My dad took one step forward. Ethan, enough. You're on thin ice at work and you come in here acting like you're prosecuting her. I felt a sharp, bitter laugh build in my chest, but I swallowed it. Dad, I'm on thin ice because she emailed my boss with fake screenshots. Claire's face tightened. They weren't fake. Then you won't mind if IT proves it, I said. I already told you, she snapped, and the blanket slipped from her shoulders like the act was getting tiring. Logs can be manipulated. People do it all the time. A statement like that, said with that much confidence, should have sounded ridiculous. Instead, it made the hair on my arms lift. Because Claire didn't talk like that, unless she'd researched it, unless she'd rehearsed it, unless she'd built herself a little narrative fortress. You can't prove I'm lying because the system is flawed. I took a breath and tried again, simpler. Claire, I said, did you ever take a picture of my screen? Yes or no? Her eyes widened slightly. Why would I do that? That wasn't a no. My mother finally spoke, voice trembling. Claire, did you take pictures? Claire looked at her with the perfect mix of hurt and disbelief. Mom, are you seriously asking me that? After everything? My mother faltered. Ethan says a lot, Claire interrupted. I felt my control slipping. You're not answering because the answer is yes. Claire stood up, blanket falling to the floor. I'm not answering because you're attacking me in my own parents' home. My dad's voice rose. This is enough. Ethan, you can't come in here and accuse her. I'm not accusing her, I said, louder now. I'm responding to what she already did. My mother's eyes filled again. Please, she whispered. Both of you, stop. Claire put a hand to her chest like she was steadying herself. I tried to do the right thing, and now I'm being treated like a criminal. That's when I realized how carefully she'd staged this. She hadn't just emailed Martin. She'd set the family scene too. Show up first, cry first, claim she was protecting me. That way anyone who questioned her would look heartless. I turned to my dad. You want to know what I'm asking for? One thing. You don't have to pick sides emotionally. Just pick facts. Wait for the IT logs. Dad's face twitched. And if the logs show you did it? My throat tightened again at the exact same betrayal I'd felt on the phone with my mother. The same reflexive doubt. If the logs show I did it, I said, voice low, then I'll accept whatever happens to me. But if they show I didn't, then you need to accept what she is. Claire's expression hardened, and for a split second the mask fell completely. Not tears, not fear, just anger at the idea of being exposed. Then she snapped it back on. You're sick, she whispered. I took a step toward the door. I'm done arguing in here. When the logs come back, we'll see who's sick. As I left, my mom called my name, but it sounded distant, like a voice through water. I got in my car and sat with my forehead against the steering wheel until my breathing slowed. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. From Sandra in HR. Subject: Update request. Investigation status. My hands tightened on the wheel. I pulled into an empty parking lot and opened it. Ethan, IT and security would like to schedule a review meeting tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Please confirm availability. No details, no comfort. Just the next step, I replied. Confirmed. That night, Claire texted me twice. Claire, you embarrassed Mom. Claire, if you keep pushing this, you're going to regret it. I didn't reply. I screenshot both messages and saved them to a folder on my personal computer labeled Work Investigation. I started saving everything. Every text, every call time, every vague threat. Because somewhere in my gut, I knew this wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about control, and Claire didn't like losing. The next day, I walked into Carrington's building feeling like I was entering a place I'd been exiled from. The front desk staff smiled politely, but I could tell they'd been told something. Not details, maybe, just that I was on leave. Asha met me in the lobby with Leo from security. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Conference room B, she said. We're ready. Inside, Martin was already seated. So was Sandra. There was also a man I hadn't met before, older, wearing a badge that said CISO office. That alone made my stomach sink. This had climbed beyond my department. Asha set a laptop on the table and connected it to the display. Ethan, she said, I'm going to walk through what we found. I'll explain in plain language, and I'll show you the supporting logs. My mouth was dry. Okay. Asha clicked, and a timeline appeared on the screen. Rows of entries, times, system names, user IDs, device IDs. First, she said, we verified whether the file referenced in the screenshots was accessed and exported as shown. She pointed to a section. Your account did access the dataset directory that day. That part is true. My heart dropped hard. Martin's eyes flicked to me, quick and unreadable. Asha held up a hand before anyone spoke. But accessing a directory is not the same as exporting a file. It happens constantly through normal work processes. She scrolled down. Now here's the key point. The screenshots show an external transfer to a personal email address. We checked 3 things: download events, email gateway logs, and endpoint activity on your issued laptop. She clicked to the next screen. There was no outbound email containing that dataset from your corporate email to any external address. Not to your sister. Not to anyone. Our email gateway would have flagged it and quarantined it even if you tried. The air in my lungs released in a shaky exhale. I didn't realize I'd been holding. Sandra watched my face carefully, like she was measuring whether relief looked like guilt. Asha continued. Second, we checked for any upload to external cloud storage from your laptop, Google Drive, Dropbox, personal OneDrive. None. Our DLP tool would have logged it. She glanced at me. So the alleged data exfiltration did not occur the way the screenshots claim. Martin's shoulders loosened slightly, almost imperceptibly, but Asha wasn't done. However, she said, the screenshots still show something that looks like a download. So we asked, could a download have happened without an email? Could you have saved it locally? She clicked again. On that day, their was a file export event tied to your user. My stomach tightened again. Asha zoomed in on a log entry. Here, timestamp 7:18 p.m. Exported file name matches the screenshot. I stared at the screen. That's impossible. I wasn't working at 7:18. Leo leaned forward. Where were you at that time? I was at home, I said. Then I remembered. Wait, 7:18 p.m. is when Claire visited my townhouse. That's around when I went into the kitchen. Claire. My mind screamed her name like an alarm. Asha nodded once. That's relevant. She tapped the screen. Now look at the device identifier. This export was not performed on your issued company laptop. The words didn't land at first. What do you mean? Asha switched to another view. Your company laptop has a registered endpoint ID. We can see its activity, logins, network connections, file operations. She pointed to a column. The export was performed on a different device, one that authenticated to our system using your credentials through a browser session. I blinked. How could that happen? I didn't log in from another device. That's the question we asked too, Asha said. So we investigated authentication. She pulled up a new log. At 7:12 p.m., your account approved a multi-factor authentication prompt. My blood went cold. I didn't approve anything, I said immediately. Sandra's eyes narrowed. Are you sure? Yes, I said. I'm sure. Asha spoke calmly, like she'd expected denial because it was true. We're not saying you knowingly approved it. We're saying your account did. She looked right at me. Ethan, do you remember if your phone was in your hand during that visit? And suddenly I had a flash of Claire in my living room, laughing, holding my phone up like she was reading something. Me not caring because it was my sister and I was getting water. I swallowed hard. I left my phone on the coffee table. Asha nodded. Then it's possible someone else approved the prompt. Martin's face tightened. So you're saying someone used his credentials, got an MFA prompt, and approved it using his phone? Yes, Asha said. And then accessed the system through a browser session from a different device. Leo added. We traced the source IP address. Asha clicked, and a line highlighted in yellow. Source IP, she said. It resolves to a residential ISP, not your home. My heart pounded. Then whose is it? Asha hesitated just a fraction, then said, it matches the Wi-Fi network registered to your parents' address. The room went silent. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because that meant one thing. The export didn't happen at my townhouse. It happened at my parents' house. And Claire's car had been in their driveway when I showed up last night. Asha continued, voice steady. We can't state who physically used the device based on logs alone, but we can state that the export was performed from a device connected to your parents' home network after an MFA approval tied to your account. Martin looked at me, and this time I saw it clearly. He believed me, or at least he believed the evidence more than the accusation now. My hands were shaking. So someone used my account at my parents' house. But how would they even have my credentials? Asha's eyes stayed on the screen as she answered. We found a password reset attempt on your account 2 days before the incident. It was initiated, then canceled. I stared. I didn't do that. Leo's voice was low. Who had access to your personal email or devices at that time? I thought of dinner, of Claire hovering, of her asking about my schedule, of her grabbing my phone to show my mom a photo, of her walking around my townhouse like she was taking measurements. And then, like a final insult, Claire's text from yesterday played in my head. If you keep pushing this, you're going to regret it. I looked up at Asha. Can you tell what device it was? Asha nodded. We have the device fingerprint and browser agent. It's a MacBook. And we also have something else. She clicked again, and a different log appeared. An attachment with metadata. The screenshots your boss received, she said. We analyzed the images. My pulse jumped. What did you find? Asha pointed to a line on the screen. The images were not direct screenshots from a live system window. The metadata shows they were edited and exported from an image editing app. Sandra inhaled sharply. Martin muttered, Jesus. Asha didn't react. She just continued. The timestamps in the images do not match system time, and the font rendering is inconsistent with the operating system interface. She looked at me. In plain language, the proof was manufactured. My body went weak with a mix of relief and fury so intense it made me dizzy. Martin finally spoke, voice tight. So Ethan didn't leak data, but someone used his credentials to export a file from a device at his parents' house, and then someone sent edited screenshots to me. Asha nodded. That is what the evidence shows. Leo added. And that export event, because of DLP controls, did not result in external transmission. The file was created, but it never left the company environment. I gripped the edge of the table. So my job, Sandra cut in. We're not concluding this meeting with employment decisions, but this information changes the investigation substantially. Martin looked directly at me, his voice quieter. Ethan, I owe you an apology for how this started. I couldn't even absorb that yet. My mind was locked onto one reality. The logs had spoken, and they were pointing straight toward my family. The meeting ended with no dramatic outburst, no instant justice, just the quiet, heavy feeling of reality clicking into place. Asha emailed a summary to HR in the CISO's office right there in the room. Leo reminded everyone that this was now a security incident involving credential misuse and attempted data exfiltration, even if the file never left the company environment. Sandra turned to me. Ethan, your access will remain disabled for the rest of today, but based on this information, you are no longer the subject of the investigation. You are a potential victim in it. Potential victim. I nodded, but my mind was already somewhere else. My parents' Wi-Fi, a MacBook, an MFA prompt, edited screenshots. All arrows pointed in one direction. And for once, it wasn't based on my feelings or my childhood grievances. It was based on timestamps and device fingerprints. Before I left the building, Martin asked me to stay behind for a minute. When the others stepped out, he rubbed his hands together like he was trying to wipe off the last 24 hours. I'm going to be straightforward, he said. When I got those screenshots, I believed them. Not because I wanted to, but because they were convincing. And because it came from your sister. People assume family wouldn't do that. I stared at the table. Yeah, people assume. Martin exhaled. I'm sorry. I should have handled it differently. I looked up. You followed procedure. If you hadn't and it was real, you'd be blamed for ignoring it. He nodded once. Still, I'll be writing a statement for HR that your performance record and past compliance history made the accusation inconsistent. For what it's worth, the way you responded, calm, direct, no defensiveness, that helped. Thanks, I said. And I meant it, even though thanks didn't touch the anger sitting in my chest. As I walked out, my phone buzzed again. Claire, did they fire you yet? I stopped in the lobby, staring at that message while people passed by with coffee cups and laptop bags, living normal lives. I didn't respond. Not yet, because I wasn't going to fight Claire in a text thread. This time, I was going to let the facts speak. That afternoon, Sandra called me. We'll be restoring your access tomorrow morning, she said. You will also be required to complete a security refresher and reset all credentials, including MFA enrollment. IT will assist. Understood, I said. She paused. Ethan, I need to ask, do you feel safe? The question caught me off guard. Safe? As in, she said carefully, is there a risk of retaliation or continued harassment from the individual who submitted the materials? I thought of Claire's threat. You're going to regret it. I don't know, I admitted, but I don't trust her. Sandra's voice stayed professional, but kinder now. If she contacts your coworkers or continues spreading claims, notify us. We will handle it. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and tried to figure out what handling it would mean. Work was one battlefield, family was another, and I couldn't keep pretending those worlds were separate. So I made a decision I'd avoided my entire adult life. I was going to confront Claire with witnesses and with evidence she couldn't cry her way around. I called my dad. He answered stiff. What now? We need to talk, I said. All of us, tonight. He scoffed. Ethan, your mother. Dad, I interrupted, and my voice came out sharper than I intended. This isn't a feelings conversation. It pulled the logs. The leak didn't happen from my laptop. The screenshots were edited. The login came from your house. Silence. Then quieter. What are you saying? I'm saying, I replied, someone at your house used my account, and I want to ask Claire in front of you and Mom why. He didn't answer right away, and in that pause I heard it, the first crack in his certainty. Finally, he said, come at 7. When I pulled into my parents' driveway that night, Claire's car was there again. Of course it was. I walked in and found her at the dining room table with her laptop open. MacBook, thin and silver. My eyes locked on it immediately, and I saw a flicker of something in her face. Not fear exactly, more like annoyance that I'd noticed. My mom stood by the sink, hands wet, like she'd been washing dishes just to have something to do. My dad sat at the head of the table, posture rigid. Claire smiled. Ethan, back for round 2. I didn't sit. I stood at the end of the table and placed my phone down like a paperweight. I'm going to say this once, I said. My company's IT and security team pulled the system logs. They proved the screenshots you sent were edited. They also proved someone used my account from this house. Claire's smile faltered, then returned in a tighter form. That's ridiculous. My dad leaned forward. Claire, she cut him off, immediately going soft. Dad, don't. He's trying to blame me because he got caught. My mom's voice trembled. But Ethan says the screenshots were edited. Claire snapped her head toward my mom. Mom, you can't seriously be doing this. He's manipulating you. There it was again. The word she always used when she couldn't control the conversation. I took a slow breath. Claire, do you have a MacBook? She blinked. Obviously, lots of people do. Did you bring it here tonight? I asked. She gestured at the table. It's right here. Great, I said. Then this should be easy. My company has the device fingerprint from the browser session that accessed my account. If your device matches, you're done. Claire laughed, too loud. You think your company is going to come interrogate me? You're delusional. No, I said. But you emailed my boss at his corporate address. You involved my employer. If they decide to pursue this, they can. My dad finally stood up. Claire, he said, voice strained, tell me the truth. Did you do this? Claire's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked genuinely offended, as if being asked was the real crime. Are you kidding me? She said. After everything I've sacrificed for this family? I stared at her. What did you sacrifice, Claire? Her face flushed. I'm not doing this. My mom stepped closer, voice small. Honey, why would you email Ethan's boss? Claire's shoulders rose and fell, and I watched her choose her next move. She tried tears. I didn't want to, she whispered. I saw something. I panicked. I thought I was helping. I shook my head. It proved the data never left the company environment. Your screenshots claimed it was emailed to you. That never happened. So what were you helping with? Claire's tears stopped like a faucet turned off. Her face hardened. You always have to be right. My dad's voice rose. Answer the question. Claire snapped. Fine. You want the truth? He deserves to lose that job. The room went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. My mom gasped. Claire's eyes stayed locked on me now. You sit there on your high horse acting like you're the responsible one, like you're better than me because you have a corporate badge and a predictable life. Meanwhile, you looked me in the eye for years and told me no like I was nothing. I felt something inside me go still. Not numb, just clear. I told you no to money, I said. Not to help, not to love, You're not entitled to my wallet or my career. She leaned forward, voice sharp. You didn't even try to help me get in at your company. Because you don't want to work, I said. And it came out calmer than I expected. You want access. You want shortcuts. And when you don't get them, you burn things down. My dad looked like he'd been punched. Claire, did you fake the screenshots? She didn't deny it. She rolled her eyes, like the question itself was childish. It was just a wake-up call, she said. He needs consequences too, for once. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. Tears finally came for real, but not from Claire, from my mother. My dad turned red, voice shaking with anger. You tried to ruin your brother's career. For what? Spite? Claire scoffed. He would have been fine if he'd just admitted it, but he had to make me look like the villain. I almost laughed at the absurdity, but it came out as a slow exhale. You didn't need me to make you look like anything, I said. You did it yourself. Claire stood, grabbing her MacBook like she was collecting her dignity off the table. Whatever. You win. Congratulations. My dad stepped in front of her. No, you don't get to whatever your way out of this. Give me your keys. Claire froze. What? You're not staying here tonight, he said. And you're not using your mother as a shield. Claire's face twisted. So you're choosing him. My dad's voice broke on the edge. I'm choosing reality. Claire stared at him like she'd never seen him before. Then she shoved past him, snatched her purse, and stormed out, slamming the front door so hard the picture frames rattled. For a few seconds, none of us moved. My mother sat down slowly, like her legs had stopped working. She kept wiping her face with the same damp dish towel, not even realizing what she was doing. My dad stared at the door, jaw working. And me? I felt relief and grief at the same time, like two different weather systems colliding in my chest. I didn't want this, my mom whispered. I didn't want it to be true. I know, I said softly. And for the first time in days, my voice didn't shake. My dad looked at me, eyes glassy but furious. Ethan, I'm sorry. I nodded once. I'm not here to punish you, but I need you to understand something. This can't happen again. Not with her. Not with anyone. My dad's shoulders slumped. What do you need? I stared at the table, then met his eyes. I need you to stop treating her feelings like evidence. She almost cost me my career. She could have cost me my future. My mother whispered, what will happen to her? I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was complicated. Part of me wanted consequences, real ones, the kind that would finally teach her the limits she'd never learned. Another part of me knew Claire had spent her whole life bouncing off soft walls and calling it love. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm done protecting her from consequences by absorbing them myself. I left soon after, not because I hated them, but because I needed space to breathe in a world where my sister's chaos wasn't the center of gravity. The next morning I returned to work. It met me at my desk, walked me through password resets, MFA re-enrollment, and a security checklist. Asha herself stopped by briefly. Your account was used, she said, but it wasn't your doing. We've documented everything. If anyone questions your integrity, there's a record. Thank you, I said. My voice cracked slightly, and I hated that it did. You probably saved my career. Asha shook her head. Logs saved your career. You just didn't panic long enough for us to read them. Martin called me into his office later that day. He didn't have the folder this time. No printed screenshots. No tension. Just 2 coffees on the desk. I pushed for a formal note in your file, he said. Not a warning, a clearance statement. It states the allegation was investigated and found to be unfounded, and that your credentials were compromised by a third party. I let out a breath. I felt like I'd been holding for a month. I appreciate that, he nodded. Also, this is not a reward for trauma, he added almost awkwardly, but your work has been solid for years. When the dust settles, I want to talk to you about moving into a senior role. We need people who don't fall apart under pressure. I looked at him. I almost did. But you didn't, he said simply. In the weeks that followed, the company tightened policies. New prompts, shorter auto-lock windows, more training about social engineering, because that's what Claire had done. She hadn't hacked a server. She'd hacked trust. And at home, things changed too. Claire sent me a long email full of blame disguised as apology. It was mostly lines like, I'm sorry you felt attacked, and I was just scared for you, and you've always had it easy. I didn't respond. I blocked her number. I told my parents I loved them, but I would not attend any gathering where Claire was present unless and until she took responsibility in a real way, No excuses, no tears as currency. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, firm, and for the first time in my life, it felt like I was living by rules that actually protected me. Months later, my mom told me Claire had been telling extended family I got her kicked out and turned everyone against her. I just said, "Mom, the truth doesn't require me to campaign." That's the part I'll end with, because it's what I learned the hard way. Some people don't ruin your life by being stronger than you. They ruin your life by being willing to lie when you're still playing fair. And if you're the kind of person who believes that being calm, honest, and consistent will always protect you, keep being that person. Just add one more thing to it: document, verify. And when the truth arrives, don't negotiate with the people who tried to bury it.